the sexy men of the Army Marksmanship Unit.
The intent of this calendar is to warn people about what a gay mustache looks like.
Shooter Matthew Dupuit. The AMU team has many talented members that excel in other venues. In this case, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit is playing for the Southeast Marquette, Michigan All-Star B team. Look how strong he looks in his skates. Shooter had held 2 records in his high school. He had the most goals in the third period of Thursday night road games against non-conference opponents. And he holds the school record for longest time in the shower after a game. Mr. February, Shooter Matthew Dupuit. The AMU shooting team has members that serve in the Army in other capacities. Here, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit poises near the statue of Iron Mike outside Building 4 in Fort Benning, Georgia. Shooter was named Drill Sergeant of the Cycle for Class 0606. It was a formality because the other 4 drill sergeants eligible were under investigation at the time, but it all counts the same on the scoreboard.
The Army has a tendency to use acronyms. AMU does not stand for Army Mustache Unit.
Having said all that, here is Shooter distinguishing himself with a holiday known as Mustache March. Shooter was placed in a sexual predator list across the nation, which made his name known by 47 of the 50 states shortly after this picture. The AMU shooting team embraced this fact with the belief that any publicity is good publicity. Mr. April, Shooter Matthew Dupuit. The handyman, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit, proves his skills is not limited to shooting a moving target with an M4 at 800 meters. Here he shows off his carpentry skills by finally starting construction of the treehouse he always dreamed about having as a kid, and a spray-on 6-pack from the 300 Superfan kit. If that wasn't enough, Shooter is shaking what his mother gave him on the photo to the left. Ladies, roll your tongues back in your mouth. He is single and ready to mingle.
Mr. May. Shooter Matthew Dupuit was lured to this home thinking he was going to remake the 1980s rock video from Whitesnake. While the video wasn't very popular, Shooter Matthew Dupuit had an opportunity to meet many young high school girls with the Britney Spears CD he was playing at the time.
Mr. June, Shooter Matthew Dupuit. Shortly after doing 300 curls, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit shows off his treasured rifle. If you look closely, you can see the buttstock under the abnormally large biceps. Eye Pro is provided by Wiley X, which accentuates his next best feature. With eyes like those and a ripped body, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit proves he is Army strong. Mr. July, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit. Here, Shooter shows off his versatility even more. On the left, Shooter shows off his magnum look, while totally flagging the cameraman. On the right, Shooter shows off his slightly open mouth look with clouds in the background. He is so high, you can see the clouds. Ladies, all you need to know is that Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit never flexes in any of his photos. Mr. August, Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit. The bear killer proves he can shoot when it counts. Shortly before this bear died of heat exhaustion, Shooter put it out of its misery from 10 meters away. Everyone had fun that night, except for the deceased bear and her lonely cubs. Mr. September, Shooter Matthew Dupuit. Fall is just around the corner, and Staff Sergeant Shooter Matthew Dupuit choosing the ass of a new basic trainee because he is slightly taller than him. The Napoleon complex is a bitch.
Shooter Matthew Dupuit. No, it's not Halloween. Shooter shows he looks good, even when he is all bloody. Being the swinger Shooter is, he decided to hook up with Columbus Cottonmouth fighter Doug Mann, his sister. This was the result. You shouldn't try to have sex with Doug Mann. Sergeant Daniel Horner. Army men come in all shapes and sizes. Sergeant Horner has the privilege of being Mr. November, because there is no way we're going to give all 12 months to Dupuit that. Here, Sergeant Warner is depressed. because he only got to stay in Afghanistan for one lovely month of Man Love Thursdays. Shooter Matthew Deputy. What would December be without hockey? Ladies, he may be 20 in the program, but he is number one in our hearts.